y'all. So this is Kim again. So on video 13 of the Ghislaine Maxwell deposition, where there's the lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit between Virginia Giuffre and Ghislaine Maxwell, they bring up that at some point Jeffrey Epstein might have wanted to have kids with one of the girls. So anyway, I found a couple of things. I had to go ahead and just go to Google for this one just because I was curious. And I asked it, I said, has it been reported that Jeffrey Epstein wanted children? It says new reports indicate that Jeffrey Epstein expressed a desire to impregnate women and spread his DNA. Ick. Okay, yes, just like ick. Sorry. I don't give a damn how much money you have, sir. You're not a good person at all. But anyway, let it go on. That's just me being ugly, but it's still the truth. Okay, so multiple sources claim that Epstein discussed a plan to impregnate as many as 20 women at a time at his New Mexico ranch, intending to distribute his DNA for the perceived betterment of our species. This desire is described as reflecting Epstein's fascination with transhumanism, which involves using technologies like genetic engineering to improve the human population, according to the New York Times. Well, look at that. I have a New York Post article up there as well. But anyway, it says critics have compared this to a modern day form of eugenics. Reports mention that Epstein shared these plans with scientists and others. Though there is no evidence that the plan ever materialized, he reportedly discussed these ideas at dinner parties and conferences, suggesting it was a secret. Yeah, and then let me see. Let's go over here. So Jeffrey Epstein wanted to turn New Mexico Rancho into a baby making factory by Bruce Golding, published July 31st, 2019. And then updated July 31st, 2019 at 6:27 p.m. Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein, Corvus, Getty Images. Okay. Ew. So Jeffrey Epstein dreamed of improving humanity by using his sperm to impregnate scores of women at his New Mexico ranch, and also wanted his penis and head frozen after death so they could eventually be reanimated, according to a report Wednesday. Holy hell, this is getting worse. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Two award-winning scientists and an advisor to large companies and wealthy individuals told the New York Times that the since disgraced multimillionaire financier shared his plan for a baby making factory in the desert on multiple occasions starting in the early 2000s. I'm sorry, this is so ridiculous. Computer scientist and writer Jaron Lanier also told the Times that he once spoke to a scientist who related, oh my gosh, how Epstein's goal was to have 20 women at a time impregnated at his 33,000 square foot Zorro Ranch outside Santa Fe. Oh my gosh. I can't. Oh my gosh. Lanier, who's been dubbed the godfather of virtual reality, said he spoke to the scientist who told him she worked at NASA during a dinner party at Epstein's Upper East Side townhouse. Lanier said the scientist told him that Epstein was inspired by the Repository for Germinal Choice, a controversial sperm bank stocked by high achieving white males, reportedly including as many as 5 Nobel Prize winners that operated in California from 1979 to 1999. Lanier told the Times he suspected that Epstein, a convicted pedophile who was busted on July 6th on child sex trafficking charges and has pleaded not guilty, used his dinner parties to screen attractive women with impressive academic credentials as potential mothers for his children. The Times report didn't make clear whether Epstein planned to have sex with the women or rely on artificial insemination, but said there's no evidence he made good on the ego driven scheme. Epstein 66 was also fascinated with the unproven science of cryogenics, in which people's bodies or body parts are frozen at very low temperatures so they can be brought back to life in the future, the Times said. A source described as an adherent of transhumanism, the belief that human evolution can be furthered through science and technology, told a paper that Epstein described wanting to have his penis and head cryogenically preserved. Oh my gosh. Epstein cultivated relationships with elite scientists, including the late theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking and the late Nobel Prize winner Murray Gell-Mann, who discovered the quark, to pursue his interest in controlled breeding and other fringe theories, the Times said. Those relationships continued even after Epstein struck a controversial 2008 plea bargain over allegations he had sexually abused scores of underage girls at his waterfront mansion in Palm Beach, Florida, the Times said. And in 2011, an Epstein charity gave $20,000 to the Worldwide Transhumanist Association, now known as Humanity Plus. The since shuttered charity also donated $100,000 to pay the salary of Humanity Plus Vice Chairman Ben Gortzel, who told the Times in an email that I have no desire to talk about Epstein right now. The stuff I'm reading about him in the papers is pretty disturbing and goes way beyond what I thought was misdoings and kinks were yuck, he added. Epstein's defense lawyers didn't return requests for comments, the Times said. Anyway, let's see what the New York Times says. So Jeffrey Epstein hoped to seed human race with his DNA. By James B. Stewart and Matthew Goldstein and Jessica Silver Greenberg. Let's see. Over the years, Jeffrey Epstein surrounded himself with many prominent scientists, including several affiliated with Harvard. Jeffrey E. Epstein, the wealthy financier who is accused of sex trafficking, had an unusual dream. He hoped to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating women at his vast New Mexico ranch. Mr. Epstein, over the years, confided to scientists and others about his scheme. According to 4 people familiar with his thinking, although there's no evidence that it ever came to fruition. Mr. Epstein's vision reflected his long-standing fascination with what has become known as transhumanism, the science of improving the human population through technologies like genetic engineering and artificial intelligence. Critics have likened transhumanism to a modern-day version of eugenics, the discredited field in improving the human race through controlled breeding. Mr. Epstein, who was charged in July with the sexual trafficking of girls as young as 14, was a serial illusionist. He lied about the identities of his clients, his wealth, his financial prowess, his personal achievements, but he managed to use connections and charisma to cultivate valuable relationships with business and political leaders. So, interviews with more than a dozen of his acquaintances, as well as public documents, show that he used the same tactics to insinuate himself into an elite scientific community, thus allowing him to pursue his interest in eugenics and other fringe fields like cryonics. Lawyers for Mr. Epstein, who had pleaded not guilty to the sex trafficking charge, did not respond to requests for comment. Mr. Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, which he confided to scientists and others, he hoped to use as the site for seeding the human race with his DNA. Mr. Epstein attracted a glittering array of prominent scientists. They included the Nobel Prize winning physicist Murray Gell-Mann, who discovered the quark, the theoretical physicist and best-selling author Stephen Hawking, the paleontologist and evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould, Oliver Sacks, the neurologist and best-selling author George M. Church, a molecular engineer whose work to identify genes that could be altered to create superior humans, and the MIT theoretical physicist Frank Wilczek, Wilczek, a Nobel laureate. The lure for some of the scientists was Mr. Epstein's money. He dangled financing for their pet projects. Some of the scientists said that the prospect of financing blinded them to the seriousness of his sexual transgressions and even led them to give credence to some of Mr. Epstein's half baked scientific musings. Scientists gathered at dinner parties in Mr. Epstein's Manhattan mansion, where Dom Perignon and expensive wines flowed freely, even though Mr. Epstein did not drink. He hosted buffet lunches at Harvard's program for evolutionary dynamics, which he had helped start with a $6.5 million donation. Others flew to conferences sponsored by Mr. Epstein in the United States Virgin Islands and were feted on his private island there. Once the scientists, including Mr. Hawking, crowded on board a submarine, once the scientists, including Mr. Hawking, crowded on board a submarine that Mr. Epstein had chartered. That's weird. The Harvard cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker said he was invited by colleagues, including Martin Nowak, a Harvard professor of mathematics and biology, and the theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss, to salons and coffee clatches, whatever that is, at which Mr. Epstein would hold court. While some of Mr. Pinker's peers hailed Mr. Epstein as brilliant, Mr. Pinker described him as an intellectual imposter. He would abruptly change the subject, ADD style, dismiss an observation with an adolescent wisecrack, Mr. Pinker said. Another scientist cultivated by Mr. Epstein, Jaron Lanier, a prolific author who is the founder of virtual reality, said that Mr. Epstein's ideas did not amount to science in that they did not lend themselves to rigorous proof. Mr. Lanier said Mr. Epstein had once hypothesized that atoms behave like investors in a marketplace. I don't even know that much about science. I don't even know what the hell that means. Okay, Mr. Lanier said he had declined any funding from Mr. Epstein and that he had met with him only once after Mr. Epstein in 2008 pleaded guilty to charges of soliciting prostitution from a minor. Mr. Epstein was willing to finance research that others viewed as bizarre. He told one scientist that he was bankrolling efforts to identify a mysterious particle that might trigger the feeling that someone is watching you. Huh? At one session at Harvard, Mr. Epstein criticized efforts to reduce starvation and provide health care to the poor because doing so increased the risk of overpopulation, said Mr. Pinker, who was there. Mr. Pinker said he had rebutted the argument, citing research showing that higher rates of infant mortality simply cause people to have more children. Mr. Epstein seemed annoyed, and a Harvard colleague later told Mr. Pinker that he had been voted off the island and was no longer welcome at Mr. Epstein's gatherings. I'm going home. Then there was Mr. Epstein's interest in eugenics. On multiple occasions, starting in the early 2000s, Mr. Epstein told scientists and businessmen about his ambitions to use his New Mexico ranch as a base where women would be inseminated with his sperm and would give birth to his babies, according to two award-winning scientists and an advisor to large companies and wealthy individuals, all of whom Mr. Epstein told about it. It was no secret. The advisor, for example, said he was told about the plans not only by Mr. Epstein at a gathering at his Manhattan townhouse, but also by at least one prominent member of the business community. One of the scientists said Mr. Epstein divulged his idea in 2001 at a dinner at the same townhouse. The other recalled Mr. Epstein discussing it with him at a 2006 conference that he hosted in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. The idea struck all three as far-fetched and disturbing. There is no indication that it would have been against the law. Ugh. Okay, Harvard's Steven Pinker was one of the scientific luminaries who met with Mr. Epstein. Once at a dinner at Mr. Epstein's mansion on Manhattan's Upper East Side, Mr. Lanier said he talked to a scientist who told him that Mr. Epstein's goal was to have 20 women at a time impregnated at his 33,000 square foot Zorro ranch in a tiny town outside Santa Fe. Mr. Lanier said the scientist identified herself as working at NASA, but he did not remember her name. According to Mr. Lanier, the NASA scientist said Mr. Epstein had based his idea for a baby ranch on accounts of the repository for germinal choice. I want to look at that, which was to be stocked with the sperm of Nobel laureates who wanted to strengthen the human gene pool. Only one Nobel Prize winner has acknowledged contributing sperm to it. The repository discontinued operations in 1999. Mr. Lanier's, the virtual reality creator and author, said he had the impression that Mr. Epstein was using the dinner parties where some guests were attractive women with impressive academic credentials to screen candidates to bear Mr. Epstein's children. Mr. Epstein did not hide his interest in tinkering with genes and in perpetuating his own DNA. Oof. One adherent of transhumanism said that he and Mr. Epstein discussed the financier's interest in cryogenics and unproven science in which people's bodies are frozen to be brought back to life in the future. Mr. Epstein told this person that he wanted his head and penis to be frozen. Oh my gosh. A Southern Trust Company, Mr. Epstein's Virgin Island Incorporated business, disclosed in the local filing that it was engaged in DNA analysis, calls the Southern Trust, which sponsored a science and math fair for school children in the Virgin Islands in 2014, were not returned. Hold on, I gotta take the dog out and pause this. In 2011, a charity established by Mr. Epstein gave $20,000 to the World Transhumanist Association, which now operates under the name Humanity Plus. The group's website says that its goal is to deeply influence a new generation of thinkers who dare to envision humanity's next steps. Mr. Epstein's foundation, which is now defunct, also gave $100,000 to pay the salary of Ben Gortzel, vice chairman of Humanity Plus, according to Mr. Gortzel's resume. Mr. Epstein's island in the United States Virgin Islands. I have no desire to talk about Epstein right now, Mr. Gortzel said in an email to the New York Times. The stuff I'm reading about him in the papers is pretty disturbing and goes way beyond what I think his misdoings and kinks were. Yuck. Alan M. Dershowitz, a professor emeritus of law at Harvard, recalled that a lunch Mr. Epstein hosted in Cambridge, Mass. He steered the conversation toward the question of how humans could be improved genetically. Mr. Dershowitz said he was appalled given the Nazis' use of eugenics to justify their genocidal effort to purify the Aryan race, yet the lunches persisted. Everyone speculated about whether these scientists were more interested in his views or more interested in his money, to Mr. Dershowitz, who was one of Mr. Epstein's defense lawyers in the 2008 case. Luminaries at Mr. Epstein's St. Thomas conference in 2006 included Mr. Hawking and the Caltech theoretical physicist Kip S. Thorne. One participant at that conference, which was ostensibly on the subject of gravity, recalled that Mr. Epstein wanted to talk about perfecting the human genome. Mr. Epstein said he was fascinated with how certain traits were passed on and how that could result in superior humans. Mr. Epstein appears to have gained entree into the scientific community through John Brockman, a literary agent whose best-selling science writers included Richard Dawkins, Daniel Goleman, and Jared Diamond. Mr. Brockman did not respond to requests for comment. For 2 decades, Mr. Brockman presided over a series of salons that matched his scientists, authors with potential benefactors. The so called billionaire's dinner apparently became a model for the gatherings at Mr. Epstein's East 71st Street townhouse, which included some of the same guests. In 2004, Mr. Brockman hosted a dinner at the Indian Summer restaurant in Monterey, California, where Mr. Epstein was introduced to scientists, including Seth Lloyd, the MIT physicist. Mr. Lloyd said that he found Mr. Epstein to be charming and to have interesting ideas, although they turned out to be quite vague. Mr. Epstein and his one-time lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, also at the Indian summer dinner, according to an account on the website of Mr. Brockman's Edge Foundation, were the Google founders, Sergey Brin and Larry Page and Jeff Bezos, who was accompanied by his mother. All the good-looking women were sitting with the physicist's table. Daniel Dubno, who was a CBS producer at the time and attended the dinner, was quoted as saying, Mr. Dubno told the Times that he did not recall the dinner or having said those words. Mr. Brockman was Mr. Gelman's agent, and Mr. Gelman, in the acknowledgement section of his 1995 book, The Cork and the Jaguar, thanked Mr. Epstein for his financial support. However impressive this roster of scientific contacts, Mr. Epstein could not resist embellishing it. He claimed on one of his websites to have had the privilege of sponsoring many prominent scientists, including Mr. Pinker, Mr. Thorne, and the MIT mathematician and geneticist Eric S. Lander. Mr. Pinker said he had never taken any financial or other support from Mr. Epstein. Needless to say, I find Epstein's behavior reprehensible, he said. Mr. Thorne, who recently won a Nobel Prize, said he attended Mr. Epstein's 2006 conference, believing it to be co-sponsored by a reputable research center. Other than that, it had no contact with, relationship with, affiliation with, or funding from Epstein, he said. I unequivocally condemn his abhorrent actions involving minors. Lee McGuire, a spokesman for Mr. Lander, said he has had no relationship with Mr. Epstein. Mr. Epstein appears to have made up a lot of things, Mr. McGuire said, and this seems to be among them. So here's a correction was made on August 1st, 2019. An earlier version of this article misstated when the prominent scientists Stephen Jay Gould, Stephen Hawking, Murray Gell-Mann, Oliver Sacks, and Frank Wilczek attended gatherings hosted by Jeffrey Epstein. The events they attended occurred before Mr. Epstein's 2008 conviction, not after it. The article also misstated the name of a group to which a charity established by Mr. Epstein donated $20,000 in 2011. It was the World Transhumanist Association, not the Worldwide Transhumanist Association. So anyway, just wanted to read that because I didn't know he was that kind of cuckoo and wanted to make his own race of people, little Epsteins. Ugh. Could you imagine? Ugh, no thank you. Anyway, sorry you had to go on this roller coaster with me, but that's pretty nasty. If him wanted to basically have a baby making ranch. Anyway, talk to y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.